Let's talk about forgiveness and responsibility. These two ideas and concepts exist in tension with one another, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Um, a while ago, every Sunday, I used to listen to a pastor that was local. Never went to his church, but as I was getting ready to go to my church, I would listen to this guy preach, and I liked the way he preached. I liked the messages that he gave, and um, to my shock, I found out sometime later that he was sexually abusing or having relations, or however you want to phrase it, with young girls, multiple girls apparently, in his congregation. Um, I, as I understand it, he had done this before at a previous congregation as well, and before this one. This was not his first time. My some years later, I was listening to a Christian. Um, I would hesitate to say podcast. Everything seems like a podcast nowadays, but it wasn't. It was a talk show or a radio show. This was on the radio and the internet, and they were discussing this situation because this pastor was now out of jail. And interestingly enough, they were discussing it because another church was debating on whether they should make him their pastor. Forgiveness and responsibility. What I found interesting about this situation was the fact that, being a Christian focused radio show, there was a number of Christians that had called up, and they said, well, you're supposed to forgive. And this shows you something that I think needs to be understood, that the world and even the church don't quite understand forgiveness or even biblical basics. If this guy gets forgiveness, we're talking about forgiveness in terms of what he did, say by the parents, the girls themselves, the former church, those he betrayed. That's one thing, okay? And by forgiveness, what I mean by that is to say that they wish him well. They hope that he's improved. That they don't carry the burden upon themselves any longer of the abuse that took place, or the shame and the guilt and everything else that goes with it. What it doesn't mean is that you get to go back to being in leadership. That just seems like a basic idea to me. And I don't know how people miss that. Again, forgiveness and responsibility. See, if you're going to be forgiven, you can be restored to the position of a brother. That's good enough. You can come sit in the pews with the rest of the people, with the rest of us sinners, right? But you can't be in leadership. Fresh out of jail, by the way. Maybe if decades have gone by and he's reformed, and clearly so. Possibly. Even then, I'm not sure about that. But definitely not in this situation. So it is interesting how this works. And I want to explore this a little bit because it's a broader subject. Because uh, as an aside, the broader subject is this: evil abuses good because good is good, and evil knows good is good, right? Somebody who's gullible tends to be innocent, and somebody who's innocent tends to be gullible. And the victimizers look for people like that. You know what I'm saying? Think about it for a minute. Those who are going out to harm people usually look for a certain type of person to do it, right? We've got an issue, apparently, in this country when it comes to pedophiles. They are less capable of defending themselves, which is what makes it all the more heinous. Notice how they become the victim, right? Men who abuse women, date rape, slipping a drug to make them less capable of fighting back, right? The lie. Okay. The reason somebody can get away with lying is because they believe that you will believe it's the truth. So they rely on the good. That's the key to being evil, is you have to understand the difference between good and evil because you rely on it. So that sets the stage for this, what I'm going to talk about. So you remember that in 2020, starting in 2019, we had the specific health situation. I think I can get away with saying pandemic and COVID and all these things. I'm not sure because I've been abused by their tube, and not a, and hit twice for not sure what having to do with COVID. But I think now that people like me have been proven to be more correct than the so-called experts were, I can speak a little bit more freely, I think. Not sure. But we're going to talk about that because we're going to talk about this article. Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Let's focus on the future and fix the problems we still need to solve. I'm going to read this a little bit. Let's just go through it. Bear with me, please. In April 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took an enormous number of hikes. We all wore cloth masks that I made myself. We had a family hand signal with the person in front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our masks. Once when another child got too close to my 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled, "Social distancing!" These precautions were totally misguided. In April 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth masks made out of old bandanas wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know. I'm going to jump down a little bit. Another example. When the vaccines came out, we lacked definitive data on the related efficacies of the Johnson & Johnson shot versus the mRNA options from Pfizer and Moderna. The mRNA vaccines had won out, but at the time, many people in health were either neutral or expressed a J&J preference. This misstep wasn't nefarious. It was the result of uncertainty. Obviously, some people intended to mislead and made wildly irresponsible claims. Remember when the public health community had to spend a lot of time and resources urging Americans not to inject themselves with bleach? That was a bad idea. Misinformation was and remains a huge problem. But most errors were made by people who were working in earnest for the good of society. This is an article that is attempting to ask for forgiveness for everything that we as a society were put through during the COVID madness. And I want to remind people of some things here. And I want to point out some things in that article. Notice that when, first of all, the bleach comment, Trump didn't say inject yourself with bleach. They twisted it to say that. But what did happen was people said, no, you inject yourself with the other thing instead. Who gets to choose what's misinformation and what you should be shielded from hearing? Doctors were kept from giving advice. They were kept from writing prescriptions. Doctors who knew their patients, knew who they were dealing with, had been in business and in medicine for years and decades. They were shut down. They were not allowed to do their business, do their profession. Notice she talked about the experts. The experts were shut down if they didn't say what specific elites wanted them to say. There was a narrative that was pushed. And we're supposed to just go. It's completely fine that medical professionals were shut down and politicians were allowed to reign. I pointed it out that I noticed quite a bit that it seemed to be anybody who talked about finances said, oh, I'm not giving financial advice, and they still do that. But people had no problem giving medical advice to others. And it wasn't just advice, was it? No, it wasn't just advice. It was, you take this or you lose your job. It was, shut down everything for 2 weeks. Nah. Indefinitely. Until we say so. It was, we don't care that you're going to lose everything. You're going to do it because it's what's best. We're the ones in charge. That's what we were treated to. Loved ones who were dying didn't get to see their relatives one last time. How humanity was treated during this event was horrific. Should we forgive? Yeah. We should forgive. Absolutely. I think that's, as a Christian, that's my responsibility. Okay? But can I ask something, though? The people who were wrong, the people who wronged everybody, who acted like Nazis and told everybody how they are to now live, what they are now to do, even though they didn't have the correct information, why do I know for I'm trying to think about how to phrase this. You know very well that in complicit or implicit in the apology or in their apology and their desire for forgiveness isn't that if it happens again they won't make the same mistake, or that they should not be the ones in control anymore. What they're actually asking for is for us to forget about everything, move on, and they just get to remain in power and do exactly whatever they feel like they need to do. You see this in politics all the time. They will go out and say they are fit for a job to lead. They will fail at that job. And they will move on. They will either say, no, I wasn't immoral, I just didn't have all the information. Meanwhile, they were shutting up the people who did. They were shutting down the people who did. My body, my choice went out the window until it was brought back. It's still like that in a lot of places. While they're demanding forgiveness, they're also demanding compliance. This is insidious. It's disgusting. And it is what is wrong with our society. It's like, the thing that bothers me is that everybody who deemed themselves, whether they were in the media or whether they were politicians, deemed themselves the arbiter of your situation. They knew what was best for you. How could they possibly have known that? What bothered me the most about that situation was the science changed when the politics changed, and we all saw it change. And people like this woman who wrote this article somehow missed it. Cloth masks have never worked, ever. That was science, pre-2019. Then it changed for the political narrative, and enforcement began, and now it changed back. I submit to you that what we were subject to was not a health crisis. It was a social experiment, and we failed. We allowed people who are complete blithering imbeciles who anointed themselves as experts sovereignty over ourselves. Especially in America, where we're supposed to be free. They now know all they have to do is find a excuse. And this has been going on for a long time, by the way. This is how wars begin too, right? We're unsafe. We have to go to war. We have to go bomb those poor brown, black, or white people over there because they're going to come here if we don't. We have to put you in house arrest and throw a diaper on your face and inject you like a barnyard animal. It's for your health, not just your health. It's for everybody's health. That's what they said. But they're sorry. Are they sorry? Or do they just want to keep their power? Is this woman just covering? It's a moral play. Don't hate me because I abused you and participated in the abuse, watched the abuse, cheered the abuse, justified the abuse. Don't blame me. I was just being moral. You notice how that was the game they played. You want to breathe? How dare you? How dare you want to breathe? You put something over your face because that'll save grandma. And if you don't, you're selfish. And I said at the time, they're setting us up for that jab. You could see it. Compliance. It was a visual way to get everybody to start telling on each other. Just like the communists and the Nazis did. But they're sorry now. Until they're not sorry. Until it happens again. And then they'll go back. Because this time it's important, you see. This time it could be real. This time you might die. Everyone's going to die. Do we value freedom or not? I don't know if you guys seen the debate between Dr. Oz and, I don't know, last guy named Fetterman. But this is an example of what I'm talking about with people in power. And it's a blatant example. And it's a different example, okay? Because it's somebody who clearly is not fit to lead. I mean, and they're going to tell you that he is. Isn't that just being partisan at that point? Somebody who physically, mentally is incapable of doing the job, you're just supposed to say the the people above us say it's okay. Just like when the science changed, the people above us say. Just like when they close everything down, the people above us say. You cannot justify abuse by claiming a moral stance. Um, this is the thing. Everybody does this, right? Everybody in power does this. I'm sure it's just human nature, but you give somebody power and they've got to justify their and they justify it normal in other ways too. So if you don't comply, you're a deplorable, you're a Nazi, and all this did was show everybody how bad you are. We see this in regards to stuff going on now with Kanye West and Kyrie Irving. Simultaneously, while they're upset or while they're pleading for forgiveness for abuse, they continue to abuse as we speak. Remember, we were shut down. Look at the amount of people who watch my YouTube videos. It's small. I got no reach. And they shut me down. The Elon Musk is trying to buy Twitter, and they're upset because he's going to allow people to speak. He's going to allow them not to be able to cancel people for ridiculous, arbitrary, politically biased reasons, which we all know that's what was going on. So the Nazis are upset because they can't accuse others of being Nazis anymore. Please forgive them for that. You see how insane this whole situation is? Please forgive us because we didn't know, and we cared though. It was all about your safety, don't you see? They care. Thanos cared. You remember in WandaVision? Notice how they took WandaVision and they made her the victim. Here is a person that wielded all the power, shut this society down, and enslaved them because of her feelings. But she's the one that deserves sympathy. Notice the focus was on her, the abuser. Notice how it's flipped around, right? Thanos, although the bad guy. And this is what bad guys do. This is the point. Bad guys morally justify their abuse. See, Thanos, yeah, he was going to kill half the universe. But it was for the sake of the universe, you see. So all the abuse we endured, all the people that became little tyrants over their family and friends and neighbors, they got to play the little dictator to everybody. Just forgive them because they cared more than you did. You see that they're the moral ones. You You may have been right, but they were moral, you see. So they should keep power. Joe Biden, he cares about you. And it doesn't matter if he's not all there mentally. Same with Fetterman. What matters is they have a position and a moral superiority to everybody below them. And they have a job to do. And we need to forgive them and move on. This goes back to the beginning of what I was talking about with this pastor. And about what evil does. Evil uses the innocent, abuses the innocent. Evil wants to be a dictator and a tyrant. And it wants to have us accept it. And it wants to say that that's actually forgiveness. It's not forgiveness. You can forgive them in your heart for being little tyrants and for desiring to abuse everybody and finding this justification to do it. That's fine. But what that does not mean, it does not mean that they then get to keep their power over us.